Hello, my name is Naisha Scott, and today I'll be discussing my thesis paper titled Faith by Generation, Are Millennials Less Religious Than Prior Generations, and Is Social Media to Blame? So I'll just jump right into my abstract. My paper seeks to identify the challenge the church and other religious organizations are facing currently in trying to promote the importance of religion in our younger generation's lives. The research presented in this paper will evaluate how individualism as well as social media have played interesting roles in the sudden decline of religion amongst the millennials and how they don't really identify with church organizations anymore. The research presented will also address contemporary views of religion and how a lot of people are not able to identify with any religion because of its very strict or traditional ways. And lastly, I tried to come up with a solution, which was the solution to this problem lies in the church and other religious organizations asserting the use of technology. I feel that a lot of these churches and organizations are not using technology to their advantage because of their very traditional approaches and ways of reaching the mass audience in public. But in order to put a halt to this sudden decline, if they want religion to be a huge factor in the shaping of people's lives, especially these younger generations coming forward, then they're going to have to use technology in order to peddle that. So let's just jump right into my introduction. I decided to start off with quite a few statistics. Only half of millennials born, those are adults born between 1981 as well as 1996, today say they believe in God with absolute certainty. This is a notable deviation from prior generations where it was anywhere from 69 to 72% that said religion was very important in their lives. Likewise, only 1 in 4 millennials today believe that religion is a very important factor in their lives. So, what is it exactly? Why the sudden decline? And what are the factors influencing this condition? That's like the whole circumference of my paper. So we'll just jump right into my literature review. That was the methodology approach that I decided to use in my paper, mostly because broadly, in much of the literature utilized for this entire study, it's widely understood or accepted that the American millennial have displayed a significant shift and reduction in their participation with traditional religion or religious institutions. So the reasons are varying, so I decided to take a very historical approach so that I could really gather and culminate all this information and convey it to the audience in a way that they could really understand by giving it a solid background. So with that being said, going into my literature review, if the only things millennials are missing are some of the more dogmatic or ritualistic aspects of religion, like going to a physical building called the church, or reading a specific limited text on the Bible, sitting down for a minimum period of time with another person, that's also aka like a pastor or a priest, while retaining all of the stated goals of these processes like gratitude, reverence, self-awareness, pursuit of more morally good aims or outcomes. One might argue that millennials are not less religious at all. Rather, this is the most diverse generation we have had in all of American history. They might be less traditional, less dogmatic, and less willing to follow route principles. Instead, they're opting to align with belief and practices that provide real meaning to their lives. So, basically saying the millennial generation is most likely going to do what comes more natural to them, something that reaches them in a way that they can understand. Obviously, a more traditional approach may not really align with a current day millennial that's more free-spirited and more individualistic. So those things play a factor in the way or the shifting away from the church in regards to those younger generations. So some might believe that the millennials are more likely to grow more faithful as time goes by, but I strongly believe that it's really up to the church. Nonetheless, let's continue with my literature review. So some might believe that the millennial are more likely to grow more faithful as they grow older. Yet the question of why the millennial have disappeared still remains. Proposed considerations of reasons for this may vary. Reasons like the belief is that millennials are reluctant to join organized religion due to a fundamental lack of trust in institutions passed down to them from their parents. That's definitely a start. They also share a generation that is graduating with a considerable amount of debt, a compromised job market, as well as a delay in marriage for early in life. So all of these reasons, uncertainty of it, the constant changing of addresses or locations or absence of traditional security might be fair reasons why millennials have not had the luxury to remain as static or solid as prior generations. And these reasons are small reasons, but these may be perhaps some of the reasons why millennials are less decisive, are perhaps less likely to settle into more traditional communities in life when there's a greater practical need or an interest and a rationale for doing so. So once again, that goes back into the point of just doing what comes natural, doing what they view as easy, finding an approach that aligns with their lives, essentially. So now we'll get into my overall study, which, pretty much, the research initially approached the question of collecting data with regard to the prevalence of religious belief among members of different generations over periods of time with the goal of understanding the generally agreed upon decline in religiosity in the worldwide. But in light of the prevalence in this phenomenon and the significant shift in religiosity, it has been observed among members of the millennial generation to a similar degree. Among members of Generation Z, a focus was placed on understanding the relationship of this group. So in order to understand these phenomenons between these two specific groups, Generation Y, Generation Z, the research was focused on the roles that both social media, relatably individual play in regards to the social decline and, obviously, religious freedoms. So the rise of individualism is probably one of the key factors in why religion is not as successful as it is with our younger generation. So when individual becomes a personality trait for an entire generation, peddled by the use of social media, one is only left with several different perspectives when it comes to religion. In other words, when you are in a time where information is at the push of a button, social media has not only taken over many social lives, but being different is a trend. Then religious organizations are going to get a run for their money when it comes to reaching these younger generations. If you're not on social media, you're not going to reach these younger generations. This comparison is undertaken through the use of literature on each subject, through the comparison of contemporary literature with respect to both factors. So we'll jump right into my conclusion. In all fairness, social media has helped shape the lives and culture of many millennials today and have allowed for the diffusion of true individualism. But at what cost? Too much of anything is bad for you. So what does that mean with the sudden eruption of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, just to name a few, with the inevitable downfall of our religious societies? The King James Version of Exodus says, "When he had brought to him down, behold, they were spread all over the land, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil that they had taken from the land of the Philippines and from the land of Judah." This is 1 Samuel 30:16. Only one can predict the future of our society by going from current trends to an overindulgence of social media. However, there are pros and cons. For the longest time, America has stood behind their religious beliefs and have allowed religion to serve as a foundation for many of our laws, many of our morals and values. But with the sudden rise in individualism and social media, how do we come up with a way to make religion relevant again? Make religion that key factor, the center of the household, I really think that finding the disconnect between the church and the younger generations will allow those two forces to make huge changes and believers out of people today. So in essence, if the church or religious organization can find a way to speak the language, get those colloquialisms of younger generations, then that's half the battle. The world is ever changing, so there will come a time when everyone has to adapt at some point. It's really just the church's turn, So learning how to communicate with younger people will allow the church to grow technologically, as well as ideally, socially, and they will also show another way or create another dimension of how the church can still be flexible over time. Younger generations can bring forth additional interpretations of the Bible and communicate the Word of God in a more personal way that they can understand. So, those old scriptures and Bible verses, take a look at it. And that concludes, my entire presentation. Thank you for your time.